Mr. President, I come to the floor to introduce a piece of legislation that I have introduced many times in past Congresses, make some progress on the goals that I seek, but not getting 100% finality of the policies that I want. And I am always able to do this with a bipartisan piece of legislation. Today I do it with Senator Johnson of South Dakota. I'll let Senator Johnson speak for himself. I want to give the reasons that I'm introducing this bill in my remarks for today. I want people to know that on most farm policy, and this deals with farm policy, that Senator from South Dakota, Mr. Johnson, and I agree on most everything on farm policy. This is a piece of legislation that's probably going to come up not so much standalone as when we discuss the reauthorization of the farm bill, which generally could start this year and probably go into next year. But I want my colleagues to know that this is an effort that I'm not giving up on. It deals with the issue of how much one individual farmer should get from the farm program. And so my approach is to put what you call a hard cap on the amount of money that one farmer can get. And my remarks will explain why. Also, though, in a time when we have great budget deficits, people might think that I'm introducing this bill just because I'm concerned about the budget deficit, because this bill, if enacted, will save about $1.5 billion. But that's not my main purpose for doing it. My main purpose is to have the historical basis for a safety net for farmers to the principle that our safety net ought to be targeted towards small and medium-sized farmers. So today, Senator Johnson and I are introducing the Rural American Preservation Act. America's farmers produce the food that feeds our families. The bill helps ensure that our farmers are able to provide a safe, abundant, and inexpensive food supply for consumers around the world while maintaining the safety net that allows small and medium-sized farmers to get through tough times. Everybody sees tough times that are out of their control. But the importance of the farm safety net can be seen no further than the dinner table that each of us sit around as recently as last night. Stop to think. If you were unable to feed your children for 3 days, because there is an old adage that says something like this, that you're only 9 meals away from a revolution. Maybe in those circumstances, if you love your children, and maybe you won't think this happens to you because we have the abundance of food so much in America. But you're aware of the fact that in a lot of countries they do have food riots when there's a shortage of food. So you might do just about anything, stealing, rioting, whatever it takes, to give those children the food that you want them to have to keep them alive after maybe not having food for 3 straight days. So the cohesion within our society, social cohesion that is one of the reasons it's vitally important that we maintain a farm program that will make sure that there's readily available food supply. Another reason I'm not going to go into in these remarks is that food is very essential to the national security of our country. In other words, the defense of our country. And all you have to do is rely upon an old adage that Napoleon used to say is that an army marches on its belly. But also more recently, you can look at the farm programs in Germany and Japan where they have in their mind the mistakes that were made for their war effort in World War II. Thank God they didn't succeed, but anyway, they did not have enough food for their military people. So I also want to think in terms of sure supply of food, not only being for social cohesion, but also for national security purposes. To ensure that the family farmer remains able to produce a food supply for this cohesive and stable society that I've talked about, we need to get the farm safety net back to its original intent to help small and medium-sized farmers get over the ups and downs of farming that are out of their control. And that could be natural disaster. It could be grain embargoes put on by the President of the United States. It could be, in the case of Nixon, freezing prices of beef and ruining the beef industry of the Midwest, as an example. You got to remember, the original intent of federal farm programs was not to help farmers get bigger and bigger. But the safety net has veered sharply off course, and that's why I talk about the necessity for a hard cap on any one farmer getting help from the farm program, because we're now seeing only 10% of the largest farmers actually getting nearly 70% of the total farm program coming out of the Treasury of the United States. There's no problem with a farmer growing larger in his operations. So let me make that clear. If you want to get bigger and bigger in America, that's an American right to do it. But the taxpayer should not have to subsidize that effort, and that's what's happening today. There comes a point where some farms reach levels that allow them to weather the tough financial times on their own. Smaller farmers do not have that same luxury, but these same small farmers play a pivotal role in producing the nation's food. I've been approached time and time again by farmers concerned about where's the next generation of farmers coming from when the price of farmland is shooting up or the price of cash rents shooting up, particularly when the federal taxpayers are subsidizing that effort. It's important that we keep young people on the farm so that they can take the lead in producing our food when the older generation of farmers is ready to turn over the reins. But the current policies that allow 10% of the largest farmers to receive nearly 70% of the total farm program payments creates a real barrier for beginning farmers. The current system puts upward pressure on land prices, making it more difficult for small and beginning farmers to buy a farm or to pay cash rent. This allows then the big farmers to get even bigger. And this is not unique to my state of Iowa. I'm sure it's not unique to the state of South Dakota, where my co-sponsor friend Senator Johnson comes from. This upward pressure on land prices is occurring in many states. It is simply good policy to have a hard cap on the amount a single farmer can receive in the farm program payments. We will keep in place a much-needed safety net for the farmers who need it the most, and it will help reduce the negative impact farm payments have on land prices and cash rent. Our bill sets the overall cap at $250,000 for married couples. Now, people listening here in the Senate or people listening back home on television probably thinks, well, that's outrageous to have a figure that high and call it a hard cap. But this is something that is national policy and may not be applicable just to my state, and it's necessary to reach some sort of common ground here in the Congress. But I recognize that agriculture can look different around the country, so this is a compromise. Just as important as setting the payment limits is a tightening of the meaning of actively engaged. And since I've used my time up, I'm not going to go into what actively engaged is about, but it means that if you're a farmer, you ought to be a farmer and not a city slicker from New York City benefiting from the farm program. I'll put the rest of my statement in the record, Mr. President, and without objection. And I yield the floor.